The punch didn't scare me. The blood didn't scare me. What terrified me was her expression, calm, frozen, like she had rehearsed watching me get hurt. And when the truth surfaced, everything made perfect sense. This wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. I met Clara at a tech workshop in Riverside City. I was presenting a topic that probably only I found interesting. Yet she waited until everyone else had left and said, "You explain complicated stuff in a way that actually feels comfortable." I wasn't the type who drew attention, no flashy career, no impressive background, but that line made me notice her more than I expected. Clara carried the natural confidence of someone raised in a comfortable family. She knew what she wanted and believed she deserved it. But from the very beginning, her family didn't think I deserved her. The first night I had dinner at their house, her mother asked, "Software engineering, is that stable?" Her tone was soft enough not to sound rude, but sharp enough for me to hear the real question beneath it. I smiled and said, "Stable enough." She responded with, "That's good," but her eyes said, "Not good enough." Clara squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Ignore her. She's always like that." Easier said than done. Every time I visited afterward, her mother delivered a series of polite interrogations. "When do you plan to buy a house? What's your monthly income? Your family lives so far, won't that be inconvenient later?" Each question felt like a small, elegant judgment. I wasn't angry, just uneasy. I believed time would soften her, that she'd eventually see I wasn't useless. And Clara always defended me, so I trusted her more than I trusted my instincts. 2 years later, we got engaged. It was a small backyard gathering with close relatives. Her father and brothers shook my hand harder than necessary, the kind of handshake meant to measure a man. Her mother simply said, "Congratulations," but her smile never reached her eyes. Still, Clara rested her head on my shoulder, smiling like the world was finally settling into place. That moment made me believe everything would be fine. I was wrong. The small things started shifting in ways I didn't realize. My coworker needed a taxi after a late meeting. I helped her call one, waited with her a few minutes, then went back inside to grab my things. That was it. But the next day, Clara suddenly asked, "Why were you home late? Who were you with?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was cold. I told her the truth. She nodded and said, "I just wanted to know," but her eyes drifted away. After that, Clara's texts got shorter. She cancelled plans. Whenever I talked about work, she fell oddly silent. I asked if something was wrong, and she always said, "Nothing," but clearly, something was happening. I just didn't know it was being fed to her by someone else. One Sunday afternoon, Clara walked into my apartment with the expression of someone prepared to deliver a verdict. No hug. No, "I'm here." She simply handed me her phone and said, "Explain." On the screen were blurry photos of me and Maya leaving a restaurant with the team, standing by a car, leaning in during a conversation. The angles were deliberately chosen to create suspicion. I laughed in disbelief. "Clara, she cut me off. My mom was right. I was stupid to trust you." I froze. "You doubt me because of this?" "It's not just this," she said, eyes reddening. "Everyone kept telling me the same thing. I defended you. I really did. But I'm tired." I spoke slowly, trying to stay calm. "Just answer me one thing. Do you trust me?" She stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "I don't know anymore." That sentence hurt more than any accusation. It wasn't rejection, it was surrender. Clara left right after, closing the door so gently it felt like a polite goodbye. I stood there in the silence, not angry, not panicking, just feeling something important crack in a way I couldn't repair. I thought that conversation was the lowest point of our relationship, but in reality it was only the last boundary before her family walked into my life in the most brutal way possible. I thought Clara just needed time to calm down, but only a few hours after that conversation, my doorbell rang non-stop like someone was trying to break it. I hadn't even reached the handle when the door was shoved open, and her father and 2 brothers pushed their way inside as if they had every right to do it. Their eyes didn't show impulsive anger. It was the kind of hostility that had been prepared, rehearsed, almost organized. The oldest brother jabbed a finger at me and barked, "You think you can play my sister like that?" The second one added, voice dripping with contempt, "I knew it. Guys like you always show their true colors." I raised my hand slightly. "You're all misunderstanding. I didn't do anything," but my sentence was cut short by a punch from Clara's father, thrown straight into my jaw, so hard my head slammed into the cabinet behind me. I staggered, barely able to find my balance, when another punch landed, and then a kick knocked my leg out from under me. Suddenly the room was filled with the sounds of crashing furniture, heavy footsteps, and my own uneven breaths, while her brothers pinned my arms down like they were restraining a criminal. "Stop it," I shouted desperately. "I didn't cheat on anyone," the older brother growled. "You still dare lie to our faces." The second one pressed his knee onto my hand, pinning it hard against the floor until it felt like the bones might crack. I tried to break free, but fighting off 3 grown men who believed they had moral authority was pointless. Then I heard soft footsteps near the doorway. Clara stood there, arms folded, eyes cold. No shock, no panic, no single stop. I looked at her, barely able to speak. "Clara, "What are you doing?" she asked evenly. "If you were innocent, you would have said it from the start. Look at yourself." My vision blurred from the blood trickling down my face. "You really believe those photos?" Clara avoided my eyes. "I believe what I saw." Her answer was so chilling it stopped me from struggling altogether. I realized she hadn't chosen logic or truth, she had chosen the story. Her mother had been whispering into her ear for weeks. Her father leaned down, fisting my collar, and said through clenched teeth, "If you come near my daughter again, next time you won't have teeth left to talk." They let go of me like dropping trash on the ground and headed out of my apartment. Clara was the last to leave. Before closing the door, she looked at me for a few seconds and said softly, "I trusted you, and you made me feel stupid." The door clicked shut lightly, but it sounded like a brutal ending. I lay on the floor for several minutes, waiting for the dizziness to subside. I forced myself to crawl toward my phone. When the paramedics arrived, the looks on their faces said enough. I was in worse shape than I realized. At the hospital, the doctor asked, "Do you want to file a police report?" I looked at my shaking hands, shaking from pain rather than fear, and answered, "Yes." No rage, no dramatics, just a simple decision. If I didn't protect myself, no one else would. The police documented everything, photos, statements, injuries, and opened an investigation. I thought the worst was over. But 3 days later, when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number and a low voice said, "You're the victim in this, and you need to know the truth," I realized the assault was only the surface of something much darker. It was Clara's uncle, and meeting him would change everything. 3 days after the assault, while my face was still swollen and my jaw still hurt, every time I spoke I received a call from a man who introduced himself as Clara's uncle, Martin. His voice was low, steady, but carried something urgent beneath it. He said, "I need to meet you. This isn't a misunderstanding." I hesitated for a moment before agreeing. We met at a small roadside diner where the noise of passing cars drowned out any chance of eavesdropping. When I sat down, he looked at me for a long moment before saying, "I'm here because you deserve to know the truth, and because Clara isn't strong enough to see it herself." I asked quietly, "What exactly do you know?" He sighed, resting both hands on the table. "Her mother orchestrated all of this. Clara didn't suddenly start doubting you on her own. The family didn't lose control. Every bit of this was guided." I stared at him, stunned. "Why would she do that?" He looked at me with a tired bitterness. "Because you're not the man she picked for Clara. She wants her daughter to marry the son of her wealthy friend, someone more suitable by her standards." I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "And the beating, that too?" He nodded, without hesitation. "She knew Clara's father and brothers were hot. She knew sowing enough suspicion would make them act, and they delivered exactly the reaction she wanted." Then he slid a USB across the table toward me. "This contains messages between Clara's mother and her friend. They talk about hiring someone to follow you, choosing camera angles that create the worst impression, coaching Clara on what to say. She wanted to break you two apart at any cost." I stared at the tiny drive lying on the table like it had the power to burn down their entire household. "Why are you helping me?" I finally asked, unable to hide my skepticism. Martin looked out the window for a moment before answering, "Because I've seen this before. Clara's mother was forced to marry her father when she was young, the man she actually cared for. That wasn't allowed. That marriage shaped her into the person she is now. I won't let Clara repeat that tragedy, and I won't let you be collateral damage." I swallowed hard. "Does Clara know any of this?" Martin shook his head firmly. "No. She only knows what her mother wants her to know. Clara isn't weak, but she's spent her entire life believing her mother is always right. You were the first choice she ever made for herself, and they wanted to erase it." He placed a hand briefly on my shoulder. "You didn't deserve any of this. Whether Clara apologizes or not, you're the only one who paid the price." When Martin left, I stayed in that diner for a long time. Not angry, not hurt, just enveloped by a cold, precise clarity. It felt like I was stepping outside the story and finally seeing its full shape. I knew I wouldn't act out of emotion. I'd let the law do exactly what it was built for. But first, I needed to prepare. The next morning, I brought the USB to my lawyer. He skimmed through the messages, then looked up sharply. "We're expanding this case. This isn't just assault, this is conspiracy." He then had me recount the full timeline, list every detail, preserve every message, every bruise, every word. I did everything he asked. Each sentence I wrote feeling sharp and metallic. No shaking, no hesitation. Meanwhile, Clara's family started texting. Her father first. "We went too far. Let's talk like men." I ignored him. Then her brother "Let it go already. Don't drag this out." Still nothing. Finally, "Clara," she wrote, "I think I was wrong. My mom said I overreacted. I want to talk to you." I read her message and set my phone down. Not out of hatred, out of absence of anything left to give. When I didn't respond, they began calling. Then they showed up at my door. Clara knocked softly, voice shaking. "Please, let me talk to you." I stood behind the door, listening to every word, but I didn't open it. I only said, loud enough for them to hear, "This isn't the time for talking." Then I called the police and reported a disturbance. That evening my lawyer called. "They're getting scared. Don't answer any of them, I replied. I know. Because my silence, the silence I once mistook for weakness, had become the sharpest weapon I had. It made them collapse inward under the weight of their own fear. And in that silence, I understood one thing clearly. Justice doesn't always need noise. Sometimes it only needs someone calm enough to never step away from the truth. On the day of the hearing, I arrived an hour early, not out of fear, but because I wanted to walk into that room with a completely steady mind. After everything that had happened, I knew today couldn't be guided by emotion. My attorney sat beside me, reviewing the documents one last time. He looked at me and said, "Today, the truth is on your side. Just stay calm," I answered. "I've been calm for a long time." Clara's family entered a few minutes later. Her father looked nothing like the man who had once grabbed my collar and hit me. His face was pale, drained. Her brothers avoided my gaze entirely, as if making eye contact would shatter whatever fragile composure they had left. Her mother walked in carefully, hiding her tension beneath a thick layer of makeup. But Clara, she was the one who made me pause. She appeared small, exhausted, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. She glanced at me with a kind of quiet dread, but I didn't return the look. Not out of spite. There was simply nothing left between us. The hearing began. The prosecutor presented every piece of evidence, photos of my injuries, the doctor's report, the police records, and finally the USB containing the messages from her mother. When those messages appeared on the large screen, make sure the photographer picks angles that look incriminating. She needs to believe he's cheating. Clara must be firm and end it before it's too late. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Her father looked down. Her brothers exchanged helpless glances, realizing for the first time that they had been nothing more than tools. Her mother bit her lip hard enough to smudge her lipstick, still trying to maintain an air of control she no longer had. Then Clara was questioned. Her voice trembled. "I didn't know my mom went this far. I just followed what she said. I didn't think." The prosecutor cut her off. "Didn't think, or didn't want to think." Clara fell silent. No one could shield her from that question. My attorney emphasized that the assault was not impulsive, it was the direct result of a manipulated narrative crafted by her mother. He said, "My client was attacked according to a plan. This wasn't an emotional mistake. It was organized harm." I stared straight ahead. This wasn't vengeance. This was simply the consequence of their choices. When the jury returned, everyone leaned forward. Clara's father and brothers were found guilty of aggravated assault and received prison sentences. Her mother was convicted as an accomplice, given a suspended sentence, ordered to pay for my medical expenses, and required to attend mandatory counseling. Clara wasn't charged since she didn't physically participate, but her initial agreement to her family's actions was officially recorded as part of the case. The verdict didn't thrill me. It only closed a door that should have never been opened. After the hearing, I stepped into the hallway and found Clara waiting. Her eyes were dim, hollow. She whispered, "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know, I was wrong. I was too weak," I replied calmly. "Whether you're weak or not isn't my concern anymore. Strength isn't about volume. It's about standing where the truth is, even when it's inconvenient." Clara lowered her head. A single tear slipped down, but I didn't stop walking. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment. Sunlight poured across the same spot on the floor where I had once lain bleeding. Strangely, looking at it no longer hurt, not because I'd forgotten, but because everything had finally reached its rightful end. I opened the window, letting the wind fill the room like fresh air entering a house long sealed shut. Nothing left to salvage, yet nothing left to fear. My phone buzzed. A message from Uncle Martin. "You did the right thing. Don't look back." I typed only, "Thank you." There was nothing more to say. That night, I turned off the lights and let the wind carry away the final echoes of this story. No triumph, no bitterness, just the quiet of someone who finally stepped out of a place he never should have been trapped in. And I realized, justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives quietly, so quietly that the people who fear it are the ones who hear it the loudest.